Welcome back to Urban Legend Hunter. Every year, thousands of people disappear in the Appalachian Mountains, looking for the same thing. Peace. Someone quiet. Someone to challenge. But others just want to prove themselves they can survive without the noise of the modern world. Most come back with pictures of waterfalls, black bears, and stories they tell around campfires. But every now and then, someone comes back with a story they spend years trying to convince themselves never happened. This is one of those stories. My name's Eric, and until this happened, I would have laughed at anyone talking about monsters in the Appalachians. I always believed every strange story had a logical explanation. A bear becomes Bigfoot, an owl becomes a ghost. A person gets lost because they made a bad decision, not because something took them. At least, that's what I believed. Now, 3 years ago, I decided to hike this section of the Appalachian backcountry by myself. Not the main trail. I like the forgotten places. The abandoned logging roads, old mining cuts, and game trails that barely show up on GPS anymore. People always asked if I was afraid of bears, and honestly, people worried me a lot more than the bears ever did out there. The first 2 days were exactly what I'd hoped for. I didn't see another person. Cell service disappeared before noon on day one, and by the second morning, the only sounds were birds, winds moving through the hemlocks in my own boots. And then I found the clearing. It didn't belong there. The forest was thick enough that sunlight barely reached the ground, but suddenly, the trees stopped in a perfect circle almost 60 feet across. Nothing grew inside. No grass, no saplings, just this gray dirt. It looked sterile, like something had poisoned the ground decades ago. Now, the weird part wasn't the clearing. It's like what stood in the middle. 8 trees. Dead, bent inwards towards each other. The trunks were twisted together 30 feet off the ground until they formed something that almost looked like a web. Now, I actually laughed. I remember saying to myself out loud, someone's got way too much free time on their hand. And then I noticed there wasn't a single bird. Not one. The silence hit me all at once. There was just nothing. Even the wind seemed to stop outside the clearing. And that's when I saw the first strand. At least, that's what I thought it was. Running between 2 trees was a strand of something almost invisible. It caught the sunlight just right, maybe as thick as fishing line. I reached towards it. Before I touched it, something slammed into the tree above my head. And it wasn't hard enough to shake the trunk, but just enough, like something heavy had landed. So I looked up. Nothing. The canopy was too dense, and I figured maybe it was a squirrel or something. Except squirrels usually make noise. Leaves move, branches bounce. This was just impact, then silence. At that moment, every instinct told me to leave. But instead, curiosity won. I followed the strands deeper into the woods. The further I walked, the more there were. Some stretched between trees, others disappeared high into the canopy where I couldn't follow them. They weren't sticky. They were more like a cable, strong enough that I couldn't snap one with my hands. I wish I had turned around right then. About 20 minutes later, I found this old stone foundation. Maybe it was an old homestead, maybe an old hunting cabin, but only the chimney was still standing. Someone had carved symbols into the stones. Circles, 8 pointed stars, things that looked almost Native American, except mixed with crosses and words I couldn't read. There was one sentence in English, weathered, almost smooth. It read, "Don't look up." Now, I remember rolling my eyes. Somebody was just trying to scare hikers. Like, come on. But then I heard the footsteps. deliberate. Crunch, 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 crunch. Not behind me. Above me. And that's impossible, I know. And that's exactly what I told myself in that moment, until another footstep echoed directly over my head. I finally looked, and at first, I couldn't understand what I was seeing. I mean, it was too big for my brain to process. Imagine a spider. Now imagine one with legs as thick as fence posts. Its body was the size of a large dog. It was covered in this dark hair that blended perfectly with the bark. It wasn't hanging and it wasn't walking across the canopy. It was just sitting there. Now, I had noticed it move before. One leg reached over a branch and then another. And now it went completely silent. I couldn't breathe. People say they'd always scream in situations like this, run, freeze, but none of this explained what actually happens. Your brain refuses to accept what your eyes are telling it. Mine kept insisting it's a fallen tree, it's a tangled branch, it's anything but what it looks like. Then it stopped. Every one of those black eyes turns toward me. And in that moment I ran. I never ran so fast in my life. Branches whipped my face. I lost my backpack, my water bottle, everything. I didn't stop. I didn't care. I even lost a boot crossing the creek. And I don't even remember reaching my truck. All I remember is the next thing I remember is sitting behind my steering wheel with every door locked, shaking. And I told myself, like, who's going to believe me? I was in shock, heat exhaustion. And for months, that's just what I believed. Then an old ranger called me after reading my incident report. He asked me exactly one question. Did you find a stone chimney out there? Now, I never told anyone about that. When I asked how he knew, he got quiet. He said something I'll never forget. There's places in these mountains that the old settlers refused to cut timber. And I asked him what lived there. He just kind of sighed and said, I don't really know. Then he said every generation gives it a different name. Before hanging up, he never told me never to go looking for that clearing again. Not because I wouldn't find it, because it only lets people find it once. I spent the next year researching every newspaper archive, mining record, and Appalachian legend I could find. I found stories about the Weaver, entire logging camps abandoned, profitable timber, without explanation, just up and leaving. Hunters who vanished after describing ropes in the trees, toxic runoff in old mines. Even a conspiracy forum even claimed that the government quietly rerouted sections of the forest trails after multiple unexplained disappearances in the 70s. Now, I don't know what's true and what's not, but the only thing I know is what I saw, or what I think I saw. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night convinced I hear footsteps, not outside, but above me, moving across my ceiling. And no matter how badly I want to, I never look up.